The CEO whispered, "I can't walk." The shy nurse's next move shocked everyone. Before we begin, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The lobby of Chicago Memorial Hospital was typically a bright, sterile space, echoing with efficient footsteps. But a sudden commotion by the main executive entrance drew every eye. A man, impeccably dressed in a bespoke charcoal power suit, his expensive Italian leather briefcase hitting the marble floor with a sickening thud, stood frozen. His legs were visibly trembling beneath the sharp crease of his trousers. I can't walk," he whispered in absolute despair. No one dared approach him. This was Julian Thorne, the most formidable CEO in the global medical technology industry. Then, one woman stepped out of the stunned crowd. Mia Harper, a shy pediatric nurse finishing her shift. She knelt down, her voice soft but steady. "It's all right. I'm here." The way she placed a protective hand on his shoulder silenced the entire hall. Julian Thorne, 38, was the definition of cold, calculated power. A self-made titan forged in the fires of relentless ambition and a childhood defined by brutal poverty. As the youngest tech mogul in the history of Silicon Valley, his public persona was more than armor. It was an impenetrable, diamond-hard shell. He was famous for his zero-tolerance policy for any excuses, delivering brutal public critiques of underperforming executives, and an emotional detachment so absolute it was rumored he had ice water in his veins. He was the ghost of perfection, never seen in motion without purpose, control, and flawless execution. But the perfect machine was secretly failing. For months, Julian had dismissed escalating numbness in his lower back as simple fatigue. Ignoring his personal physician's urgent warnings, he had postponed the surgery 3 times. Today, rushing from a make-or-break negotiation where a $500 million merger hung in the balance, he came to the hospital for a discreet, off-the-record cortisone shot. Stepping out of the executive elevator, a sudden, chilling numbness replaced the throbbing pain in his spine. It wasn't just pain, it was betrayal. He tried to take a step toward the exit, but his body refused the command. A searing, white-hot spasm gripped his lumbar region, and his balance dissolved into chaos. He didn't fall, but he froze, trapped in a standing paralysis that was somehow more terrifying. Julian's internal monologue was screaming. Panic was a tidal wave, not because of the pain, but because of the exposure. "They're watching. They're all watching me. They will use this. They will label me weak, broken, unfit to lead." His mind raced, calculating the catastrophic PR fallout, the inevitable stock dip, and the hungry vultures on his board waiting for a single slip-up. The physical pain was secondary to the professional horror. The crowd of expensive suits, visiting donors, and white coats maintained a 10-foot radius, paralyzed by his reputation. No one wanted to touch the untouchable Iron Titan. When a flash of blue light confirmed a hospital visitor was recording with a cell phone, Julian, driven by a primal need for control, tried to shield his face with a shaking hand. "No, stop. You must stop filming me. Delete that footage immediately," he pleaded, his voice cracking. The formidable CEO reduced to a desperate, trembling man. Mia Harper, 25, was the opposite. A gentle, introverted soul who worked in the pediatric ward because she preferred the honesty of children to the politics of adults. She was currently clutching a bag of stale bagels, exhausted from a 12-hour shift. She saw the frantic movement and the wide, panicked eyes of the man in the suit. She didn't see the CEO. She saw a patient drowning in front of an audience. She didn't think about his net worth. She thought about his dignity. Ignoring the whispers of the senior doctors who stood frozen, she walked directly into the center of the commotion. She knelt down, meeting his desperate gaze with an unblinking calm. She ignored the cell phones and the gasps. "Can I touch you, Julian? I need to stabilize your back. I promise I won't hurt you," she asked, using his first name, a shocking familiarity that made the crowd gasp. Julian stared down at her, distrust etched into every sharp feature of his face. His body was locked in a rictus of pain, but his eyes were searching hers for an ulterior motive. "Who are you? Are you a neurosurgeon, a spinal specialist?" he demanded, his voice tight. "No," Mia replied, her gaze steady, her hands resting patiently on her knees, refusing to be intimidated by his tone. "I'm a pediatric nurse. I deal with patients who are scared and in pain every day. I know how to handle fear, and I know how to restore calm." Her quiet confidence, the simple, undeniable truth of her statement, instantly cut through his rising hysteria. He wasn't a billionaire to her. He was just a scared person. She gently placed her expert hands on his lower back, palpating with controlled pressure through the expensive fabric of his suit. She quickly assessed the damage, an acute lumbar muscle spasm, likely triggered by a herniation. Immobile, terrifying, but not paralyzed. "You're safe. Your spine is intact," she confirmed, relief evident in her soft tone. "But you cannot put weight on this leg. You are done walking for the day. I need to get you to a private room for stabilization." I can't be seen in a wheelchair," he hissed, the public image still his greatest prison. "If a photo of me being wheeled out like an invalid hits the internet, my stock drops 10 points by morning. Are you absolutely certain you can help me without making a scene?" "I promise you," Mia said, locking eyes with him, "I handle fragile things for a living. You are safe with me."
She stood up and signaled for a nearby orderly to bring a wheelchair, but she waved him away when he tried to approach. "I've got him," she stated. Then came the move that shocked the lobby. Mia didn't just help him sit. She stepped inside his personal space, wrapping her arm firmly around his waist, forcing him to lean his entire heavy frame against her small shoulder. It was an embrace of necessity, but it looked like an act of profound intimacy. She used her body as a living crutch, pivoting him with a technical grace that made the movement look seamless. The lobby was enveloped in absolute silence as the formidable CEO, the titan of industry, collapsed gratefully against the shoulder of an anonymous nurse in blue scrubs. Julian, utterly undone by the pain, hid his face against the soft cotton of her shoulder, clinging to her arm with an intensity of relief he hadn't felt since he was a boy. A senior hospital administrator later recounted, "I'd never seen Mr. Thorne allow anyone to stand within 3 feet of him. He was always untouchable. But he clung to that nurse as if she were the only solid thing left on earth. She was his quiet anchor in the storm he usually controlled." Mia guided Julian straight past the chaotic emergency triage and into a designated private examination room. She helped him transfer from the wheelchair to the examination table, moving with a controlled grace that spoke of experience and deceptive strength. There was no child with them, but Mia carried something else, a palpable aura of peace that seemed to fill the room. As she adjusted the pillows for Julian, he watched her, wide-eyed and pale. "Does it hurt a lot?" she asked softly, her voice losing its professional edge and becoming human. Julian, whose public face had only 2 settings, commanding or dismissive, felt his features soften into a grimace of genuine pain. "It feels like I'm being torn in half," he admitted, the vulnerability astonishing even to himself. "I feel useless." Mia reached into her oversized scrub pocket and pulled out not a medical device, but a stress ball shaped like a goofy cartoon heart, something she used for her kid patients. "Squeeze this," Mia instructed, placing the toy firmly in Julian's manicured hand. "It helps the kids be brave. When you squeeze it, remember that pain is just a signal, not a failure." Julian Thorne, a man accustomed to clutching multi-billion-dollar contracts and fountain pens worth more than cars, found himself clutching the cheap, squishy toy. It felt ridiculous, potent, and real. The attending physician confirmed Mia's assessment: acute lumbar disc herniation, requiring full, non-negotiable rest, immobilization, and a brace. As soon as the doctor mentioned backrest, Julian instantly tried to push himself up, driven by pure professional panic. "No, that's impossible," he gasped, grabbing the edge of the table, his face turning gray with effort. "I have a board meeting in 2 hours. I'm unveiling the Gemini project. This deal is pivotal to the entire fiscal year. If I don't appear, the stock will crater and the competition will eat us alive." Mia firmly but gently pressed her hands against his chest, pushing him back onto the pillows. Her hands were small, but her authority was absolute. "Stop, Julian. Listen to me," she commanded, her voice low and unwavering, dropping the "sir" completely. "The financial loss from one delayed presentation is recoverable. You can reschedule a meeting. Permanent nerve damage caused by ignoring a spinal injury is not recoverable. You are too important to risk your ability to walk for a single afternoon presentation." The stark threat of permanent disability, delivered with her nurse's certainty, silenced his professional fury. After the doctor left to arrange the back brace, Julian stared at Mia, his carefully constructed defenses stripped away. He saw the quiet exhaustion in her eyes and the deep empathy that was impossible to fake. "Why are you still here? My shift ended an hour ago. Why did you help me? Why do you care this much?" "It's not about you, the CEO, and it's not about caring that much. It's about a baseline. I just did what a person is supposed to do for another person who is clearly hurting and cannot help themselves. You don't need to be a billionaire to deserve that." She helped him transfer into a high-quality hospital wheelchair, keeping his movements minimal. As they moved toward the exit, they were ambushed by the media. The story of the CEO's collapse had already spread like wildfire on Twitter.
Julian flinched violently, raising a hand to shield his face, his eyes wide with fear. "They're here! I can't let them see me in a chair," he whispered. Mia instantly moved the wheelchair into a protective position, putting her own body between him and the glass doors. "You don't need to be strong for them," she murmured into his ear, her hand resting on his shoulder, a steady weight of protection. "You just need to squeeze that stress ball and look at my back." The press surged as the automatic doors opened. Seeing the chaos, Mia didn't shrink back. She stopped the chair. She took off her scrub jacket and, in a move of defiance, draped it over Julian's head and shoulders like a hood, shielding his face completely. She then pushed the chair forward, not with hesitation, but with the force of a battering ram. She walked directly into the center of the commotion, using her body as a barrier against the harsh lights and the barrage of microphones. "Back up! Patient coming through! Move!" she shouted, her voice surprisingly loud, commanding the space. Inside the armored SUV, the adrenaline faded, and Julian pulled the jacket off his head. He confessed, his voice a vulnerable whisper against the leather seat. "I spent my whole life ensuring I would never, ever need anyone. I fired people for showing less weakness than this. I hate this feeling of needing your help." "That feeling is not weakness, Julian," Mia replied, her hand resting reassuringly on his forearm. "That feeling is called trust, and today, when you are in pain, trusting the right person is the strongest thing you can do." He delivered her address to the driver, but she shook her head. "No, you're not going to be alone right now. Take us to your place. I need to make sure the swelling goes down." Julian didn't argue. He was delivered to his penthouse suite overlooking the Chicago skyline. As the immediate crisis subsided, Julian leaned against the velvet headboard of his massive bed, heavy with emotional and physical exhaustion. "If I told you that under all the power, I am absolutely terrified of losing control of my body, my company, my future, would you believe me?" Mia stood by the window, looking at the city lights, her silhouette small against the glass. "Yes, completely. I know that fear very intimately, Julian. The people who carry the most weight worry most about dropping it,
because when it drops, the damage is catastrophic." "You speak like someone who has watched a strong person break." "I have," Mia replied, turning to face him. "My father. He was a factory foreman, toughest man I knew. He hurt his back on the line, hid it for months because he didn't want to look weak. He collapsed one day and never walked again. He died of a heart attack a year later, not from the injury, but from the heartbreak of feeling useless." Mia paused, her voice trembling slightly. "The grief taught me that the only thing that truly breaks you isn't the fall itself, but the belief that you have to pick yourself up alone. I couldn't save him, but I can help you." Tears, the first tears anyone had seen Julian shed in decades, spilled down his cheeks. I have never had anyone beside me when I finally fell apart. Never. I'm always the one expected to be standing." "You are not alone today," Mia promised, pulling a chair close to the bed. "And you don't have to be the one standing right now. Just rest." She squeezed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Julian held on tight, drifting off to sleep, not like a CEO, but like a man finally allowed to close his eyes. The following morning, professional panic returned with a vengeance. Despite the prescribed pain medication and Mia's explicit orders, Julian felt the overwhelming, conditioned need to project strength. The Gemini Project presentation was in 2 hours. He pushed the covers aside and attempted to stand, driven by a catastrophic, almost suicidal sense of duty. His leg instantly buckled. He didn't fall gracefully. He crashed violently and painfully onto the plush carpet. The pain was excruciating, a white-hot lightning bolt up his spine. "I can't walk! I can't do this!" he shouted, slamming his fist into the floor, tears of sheer frustration and agony streaming down his face. "I am going to lose everything. They will label me incapable, weak. I will lose the company I built piece by painful piece." Mia rushed in from the kitchen, dropping a cup of coffee. She didn't scream. She caught him by the shoulders as he flailed, trying to drag himself up. "Stop, Julian! Stop doing this to yourself! You have nothing to prove in this room!" She spoke fiercely, shaking him slightly to break the cycle of self-destruction. "You are injured. That doesn't make you a failure. It makes you a human being." He clung to her scrub top, sobbing uncontrollably, his forehead resting against her stomach. "Mia, I am absolutely terrified. I built this company on the promise of never failing. I cannot lose it now. The meeting starts in 90 minutes. I have to go." Suddenly, the cold steel returned to his voice, tempered by the desperate, humiliating reality of his need. He looked up at her, his eyes burning with almost a mad resolve. "Take me," he commanded. "Take me to the Thorne Tower. I refuse to let them see me fail, but I need you and only you to ensure they don't see me fall." Mia saw the life-or-death pressure in his eyes. She knew arguments were futile. "All right," she agreed, the word of commitment carved in stone. "But we do it safely, my way, with certainty and complete control. You don't walk, I push." He immediately called his head of security, Max, a hulking former Marine who looked at Julian's condition with ill-disguised shock. "Max, I'm going to the tower. Nurse Harper is in command of my transport. Do not let anyone touch my wheelchair but her. If the press gets too close, you clear a path, but she drives." Max simply nodded, recognizing the unique, desperate authority in Julian's voice.
The Thorne Tower was not just besieged, it was under a state of siege by global media. As their armored Mercedes pulled up to the curb, the flashing lights and roaring voices were deafening. Hundreds of journalists swarmed the entrance like piranhas sensing blood. Julian instantly shrank back, pulling his body into a protective hunch in the seat. "Too many people. I can't. The cameras will see the brace. They'll see the chair. I can't." "Look at me, Julian. Now," Mia instructed, her voice cutting through the noise. "Focus on my voice. I am your shield,
Nothing touches you while I'm behind you. You look forward and you trust me to steer." She opened her door, moved around the car and opened his. She deployed the wheelchair with a snap of efficiency. This time it wasn't a rescue, it was a deliberate public statement. Mia didn't rush, didn't try to sneak him in the back door. She wheeled him directly toward the media gauntlet with a protective certainty that instantly silenced the frenzy. Reporters froze, cameras held mid-flash. The sight was surreal. The CEO, the global icon of ruthless self-made strength, was being pushed with undeniable authority by a young woman in simple blue scrubs. Julian instantly shrank back, pulling his body into a protective hunch in the seat. "Too many people. I can't. The cameras will see the brace. They'll see the chair. I can't." "Look at me, Julian. Now," Mia instructed, her voice cutting through the noise. "Focus on my voice. I am your shield. Nothing touches you while I'm behind you. You look forward and you trust me to steer." She opened her door, moved around the car, and opened his. She deployed the wheelchair with a snap of efficiency. This time it wasn't a rescue, it was a deliberate public statement. Mia didn't rush, didn't try to sneak him in the back door. She wheeled him directly toward the media gauntlet with a protective certainty that instantly silenced the frenzy. Reporters froze, cameras held mid-flash. The sight was surreal. The CEO, the global icon of ruthless self-made strength, was being pushed with undeniable authority by a young woman in simple blue scrubs. Julian kept his eyes fixed forward, his hands gripping the armrests, drawing strength from the small, steady hands pushing him. Mia walked steadily, purposefully through the crowd. She moved with the quiet dignity of a guard protecting a king. She delivered him into the hushed, high-stakes conference room filled with his most dangerous and skeptical board members. The air was thick with tension. As Julian rolled in, a few board members exchanged smirked glances. Mia ignored them. She gently settled him at the head of the table, locking the brakes with a loud, decisive click that echoed in the silent room. She positioned herself perfectly, not as a servant, but as his silent, unwavering shadow, standing just to his right, close enough to intervene, far enough not to distract. The presentation began. Julian spoke with chilling clarity and commanding conviction. He unveiled the pivotal Gemini project data, his intellect sharper than ever, but he concluded with an unexpected philosophical shift, prioritizing patient care over immediate profit margins, a change inspired by his recent confrontation with his own fragility. His injured back throbbed violently beneath the suit. His hands trembled on the table, but only Mia saw. At one point, a cynical board member, Mr. Sterling, leaned forward aggressively. "This is touching, Julian, but are you physically fit to lead? You're sitting down." Julian faltered. The room held its breath. Mia didn't speak, but she stepped forward, placing a hand firmly on the back of his chair, her knuckles grazing his shoulder, a silent signal, "I am here." He felt the heat of her hand. He looked at Sterling. "I am sitting, Mr. Sterling, because I have learned that a man's strength is not in his legs, but in his vision, and my vision is clearer than it has ever been." The answer was perfect. As he concluded, detailing the humanitarian aspects of their new strategy, the entire hall, stunned by his brilliance and moved by his apparent shift in perspective, rose in a thunderous standing ovation. Julian looked back at Mia, his eyes pooling with tears of profound dual triumph, professional victory and personal survival. "You saved me," he mouthed, his lips barely moving. "My career, my company. You saved the best part of me by letting me be weak." She simply offered a slight nod and a shy, private smile, a silent moment of shared victory that superseded the public spectacle. A senior executive later confessed, "I couldn't take my eyes off the nurse. She was the only reason he was standing tall, even while sitting down." Following the triumphant presentation, Julian fully committed to physical therapy. Realizing his body demanded the same meticulous attention he gave his business, Mia became his constant. Their quiet, stable rhythm became the perfect counterpoint to his high-octane, high-stress world. She didn't treat him like a CEO. She treated him like a man who needed to relearn how to breathe. The gentle domestic rhythm of evenings spent reading, doing stretches, and simply talking slowly melted the rigid ice around his heart. One chilly evening, as Mia checked his vitals on the terrace, Julian looked over, his voice tentative and honest. "Mia," he began, the casual use of her name now feeling like a profound intimacy. "I've reviewed the data. The only consistent predictor of my stability over the last month has been your presence." He paused, his eyes dark and serious. "If I told you that I don't just want you to be my temporary nurse while I recover, but my permanent partner, would that level of unexpected change frighten you?" She set the blood pressure cuff aside. She looked at him, serene and centered. The shy girl who once hid in the background had found her voice. "No, Julian," she said, her voice deep and honest. "It wouldn't frighten me. I want to be the place you lean, the person you don't have to put the armor on for." A few weeks later, the moment of physical and emotional truth arrived. Julian was ready to walk independently. The final session of physical therapy was complete. Mia stood back, nodding encouragement. Julian took a cautious step, then two, then three. His muscles screamed in protest, but his resolve was stronger. On the fourth step, his previously injured knee trembled violently. He faltered, his balance momentarily lost, a flash of pure panic crossing his face.
Mia instantly moved. She didn't rush, but she stepped into his space, catching his hands, holding him steady in a powerful, gentle, and utterly familiar embrace. Julian didn't curse this time. He let out a breath of relief that turned into a laugh. "If it weren't for you, Mia, I would have fallen on my face again. I swear I'm completely incapable of walking gracefully." "And if it weren't for you," Mia countered, her eyes shining with affection and a depth of devotion that eclipsed the professional duty she once had, "I would have been too afraid to ever step out of the shadows. You taught me that my voice matters." Julian straightened, leaning slightly into her stability, but meeting her eye with his full commanding conviction. The moment was profound, the culmination of shared trauma and recovery. "Mia, I have something I need to tell you. Something more important to my future than any board meeting or acquisition." He held his breath, sensing the absolute gravity of the moment. "From the day you sat on that lobby floor with me, I stopped being afraid of the future. Because I realized I was only ever afraid of one thing." "Afraid of what, Julian?" she asked gently. "I was afraid of being loved. Because I thought love meant weakness, distraction, and the ultimate surrender of control. You showed me that love isn't a surrender. It's the strongest foundation of all. You became my home, not just my nurse." Julian smiled, a rare, complete, beautiful smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He stepped fully toward her, closing the gap, no longer needing the cane, only needing her. "I don't need you to save me anymore, Mia. I just need you to be with me. I love you completely, exactly as you are. Quiet, brilliant, and beautifully human." Mia reached up, wrapping her arms around his neck, burying her face in the shoulder she had once protected. "I love you too, and I promise I'm never letting go." The CEO and the shy nurse, a love forged not in glamour, but in the vulnerability of a complete physical collapse and the choice to help a stranger breathe. Julian looked down at the woman who was now his whole future. He hadn't just saved a career. He had unlocked a heart and rebuilt his own shattered existence. The cycle of kindness, fear, and profound connection was finally complete. All because one woman chose to prioritize common humanity over corporate hierarchy and sit on the floor with a man who had fallen. If you believe stories about second chances, the true meaning of strength, and unconditional love deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.